Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you, and welcome to Eye on Islam, the show where we look at current affairs through an Islamic lens. Each week, we'll look at a news story which has a direct relevance to the beautiful religion of Islam, and we'll break it down from a Muslim perspective. Today, we're going to examine the attempt by Western societies to impose LGBTQ ideology onto Muslims. But before we get into this topic, let's listen to the words of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, who addresses this issue in the 7th Surah of the Holy Quran.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. ولوطا إذ قال لقومه أتأتون الفاحشة ما سبقكم بها من أحد من العالمين إنكم لتأتون الرجال شهوة من دون النساء بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وما كان جواب قومه إلا أن قالوا أخرجوهم من قريتكم إنهم أناس يتطهرون فأنجيناه وأهله إلا امرأته كانت من الغابرين وأمطرنا عليهم مطرا فانظر كيف كان عاقبة المجرمين.
Islam has a very clear prohibition on homosexual acts, but despite this, Western nations have been trying to persuade Muslims to abandon their principles, and pro-LGBTQ propaganda is nowhere more evident than in the school system, as the following report explains.
A new challenge faces religious communities in the Western world. A push to introduce controversial same-sex relationship education material onto children at state schools. The issue has become such a hot-button topic that protests have flared up across Britain and in the US in recent years, with a recent example taking place in South Wales.
Please let children be children, say no to our SE and save our children.
Although the issue has upset religious Jewish and Christian communities, Muslims have made the biggest push to challenge what's being described as LGBT indoctrination in primary schools. Back in 2019, UK cities witnessed protest after a UK Birmingham school's introduction of a pro-LGBT curriculum called No Outsiders. In 2021, parents in East London condemned their local school for allegedly sexualizing children with a relationship and sex education lesson, or RSE, which also included same-sex narratives. And in October 2022, hundreds of parents protested in Michigan, USA, over a local school's use of LGBT books. Back in Britain, a school in England's West Midlands sparked a row after inviting a self-described gay Muslim to address Muslim students. His visit was challenged by students and parents.
Why is he advocating this to young people, young Muslims who are still learning their religion? You're advocating the wrong thing. Do you agree that being gay and Muslim is wrong?
No, I don't agree with that.
So you
Supporters of the lesson say it's about combating intolerance towards the gay community. However, religious communities say they have a right to practice their faith and raise their children with their own values.
Well, joining us in the studio today to talk about Western nations and LGBTQ propaganda is Shakeel Afsar, an activist from Birmingham in the UK, where he closely was involved in protests against LGBTQ teaching in primary schools. And joining us on Skype from Iraq is Sheikh Jaffer Ladak, an Islamic scholar and the Imam of Bab al-Ilm Centre in Leeds. Thank you very much for joining us on the show, Shakeel. It's a pleasure to have you. Now, just tell me, let's go back, 2019, I think it was, the issue in Birmingham. There's a massive protest movement with Muslims up there. Tell me your experience.
Well, to be honest, it was a group of parents who were just standing up and asking for the same privilege the LGBT community have been fighting, well, apparently fighting for many years. Parents were only reiterating the fact that their children are very young, that this is a very sensitive subject, and that the fact that they feel that their religious, moral and philosophical convictions are being watered down. My actual feeling towards this all was there was a barbaric amount of discrimination from the LGBT community towards these innocent parents who were only standing and trying to defend the innocence of their children. It was so bad to the point where we were labeled extremists, we were labeled bigots. People were being stopped and, questioned on what jobs they do, where they do, being referred to prevent. It was an absolutely dreadful time.
So basically, for expressing your freedom of speech, for your own views on the subject, parents were being branded extremists and terrorists.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a group of people who are claiming equality, but then are completely disallowing what we believe. They claim tolerance, but are being completely intolerant towards our beliefs. We have never, as people from Birmingham and parents, I can vouch that we have never questioned the rights or wrongs of homosexuality. According to our religion, is forbidden, but we have never questioned these people. We have never asked them to stop what they're doing. We are merely and are still asking them to stop indoctrinating our children and pushing their world views on our innocent, young, innocent minds. If they were a bit older, we would have enough time to educate our children about Islam or Christianity or any other Abrahamic faith. But the fact that this is being pushed, I do actually believe that there is a bigger agenda to water down our religious values of British Muslims, and this is in overdrive. It's complete overdrive.
And obviously, this was the No Outsiders initiative, which was being pushed into schools in Birmingham.
Absolutely.
Which was mentioned in the report.
Absolutely.
What kind of stuff was going on in No Outsiders?
Well, look, young Muslim children whose parents are praying namaz 5 times a day, the children were coming home with books such as Princess Boy, which would suggest a transgender lifestyle, a boy dressing as a girl being acceptable. Parents were horrified. These are parents who wake up at the crack of dawn to, pray to their Lord, ask for forgiveness, and try to be good, peaceful human beings. And their children are coming home with books that are completely contradictory to everything that their religion says.
I think one thing that bothers a lot of parents as well is the fact that it's introduced in primary school. So it's quite a young age we're dealing with.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of parents were saying they didn't want any relationship education at that age, regardless of same gender or not. Before we carry on the talk, Shakeel, let's bring in another voice onto this issue. We have a Sheikh Jaffer Ladak coming to us via Skype from Iraq. Welcome to the show, Sheikh. Thank you for joining us. First of all, why are Muslim parents so upset by this RSE curriculum, in your view? What's the big issue?
The development of a child goes through stages. And there are times in which a child is capable of understanding something fully, where a child has to learn something at a preparatory stage, and other times when a child cannot be talked to about certain things because the mind is maybe ill-prepared or immature to be able to understand what it's being told or the images that it's consuming. And we know that from all sorts of social studies. If you show children acts of violence, for example, they think that this is normal and they will adopt those actions without realizing the consequences of it. If a child sees another child pulling someone's hair or hitting someone, and they're not taught that these behaviors are not correct, when they adopt these for themselves, it becomes part and parcel of whom they are. In the same way, of course, every human being has innate nature, desires, curiosities. The fear that many parents have is, along with the decoupling of traditional moral understanding, the fear that parents have is that certain educational ideas are heaping content, especially same-sex content for exploring one's body, being able to be completely free and open in children when they are not yet mature enough to understand the content or the consequences of those content. And as a result, parents are protesting. Parents are pulling their children out of school. Some parents are even leaving the country out of fear of what the medium to long-term moral situation of the country will be like.
Another example of what's been going on is an effort that was made last year at a UK school to essentially reinterpret the Quran from a pro-LGBT position. Is there any room for debate on this subject, Sheikh?
The Quran places the identity of a human being in relationship to his creator, God Almighty. As an example, we get this from the verses that speak about the Mi'raj, the ascension of the Blessed Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him and his noble family, where the verse says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Subhanalladhi asra bi'abdihi laylan min al-masjid al-harami ila al-masjid al-aqsa. That blessed is he, the Prophet, the servant of Allah who went on this journey. The point is that even the peak of creation, the best of creation, was referred to as his identity as a servant of God alone. What we're seeing here is that some of these movements are seeking to shift the identity of a person and subsume them either within a sexual identity or within a gender-based identity, or even sometimes based on pronouns, sometimes even further, God forbid, people are identifying themselves as animals and things like this. So from the Islamic perspective, our identity is not one that is created and shaped and reshaped by social ideals of the time. We have this until today. This might be a little bit controversial, but try to understand it. When we say, I am white, or I am black, or I am brown, there is no such thing. It's just the melatonin of my skin, right? There's no such thing as a black person or a white person per se. It's just the melatonin or lack thereof in my skin. There's no such thing as a Pakistani or an Iraqi or an Arab. These are social terms that we have created for ourselves. In Islam, our identity is related to God. Our identity is related to our religion. And so when a Muslim or non-Muslim comes forward and says that I can be this type of person or I can be that type of person, I have to think about whether this is social conditioning or whether this is actually something that is within the framework of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his family. And those who try to start by saying, I am this type of Muslim, or I am with these sorts of pronouns, we have to recognize that these things are social constructs. They have no value in and of themselves, and sometimes they're actually in direct conflict with Islam. I would argue that in this case, when this person came and said, I am a gay Muslim, to place the idea of his sexuality and his gayness or his lust for fellow men ahead of his Islam, or to subsume his Islam within that identity, is something that is not acceptable within Islam and actually goes against Islam.
And finally, given that the UK is a secular country, should Western Muslims be more tolerant of this type of education, would you say, Sheikh?
But if a society is truly secular, then it allows for that space for there to be sort of a battleground of ideas, a marketplace of ideas. And if one group of people want to be able to put forward their ideas as robustly as they are, and we can see in the LGBTQ community that, it's being supported to the tune of hundreds of millions of pounds. It's being supported with a great amount of media landscape. Then from the same perspective, it's truly a secular society, and truly it should be a marketplace of ideas. The traditional values of religion and family and the evidences these communities have on this side should be as forthcoming and as welcomed as any other sort of idea. I should feel free to be able to put forth my understanding of this matter, as well as somebody else. But the fear that we have at the moment, that many Muslims have, is that if they speak about their traditional family values, about their religious values, starting from the perspective of God, what is right, what is wrong morally, the Muslim society at the moment feels very shut down. In fact, it actually feels under threat.
Well, thank you very much, Sheikh. We'll have to leave it there for now, but thank you for joining us via Skype, and apologies for any technical issues that occurred during the talk. Well, before we continue this discussion, let's take a look and see what people on the streets of London have to say about this.
I don't think it's appropriate to put LGBT into the curriculum. I think there are far more important things than LGBT. Teaching children at an early age about gender is quite confusing for them, and because the child's brain doesn't develop till the age of 27, so there's a lot of confusion that can take place. So why not teach them how to look after themselves, nutrition, teach them how to cook, yeah, teach them how to look after their money, teach them about finance, teach them about the big wider world, which is far more important.
If they're at a young age, I'm against it, of course, because the children, they don't have right for like having an opinion, so they have like their parents that support or against it, so they should take their parents' permission before asking or pursuing any of that in the education system. It shouldn't be like taught straight to kids without the consent or any form of agreement from the parents.
Personally, I don't think so, especially at like primary school level. I don't think it's necessary. Maybe a little bit older to understand what's happening and that there are people like that, but I don't think, especially as young children.
I disagree with them, especially in the primary school. They start to teach them, taught them from reception, maybe nursery. Yeah, I was working in a nursery and they started well, they say it like a rule or regular to do it, but I disagree with them. It's still a small children. They can't make their own decision. They should be like maybe bigger enough. If some child asks, maybe they can answer him. But if not, why you put these children in this situation? I don't like it. I disagree with it. 100%.
I don't think it's appropriate because they're really young, and also some people are different religions and they don't agree with this stuff and they're still talking about it. So I think it's a bit rude that they're talking about it when everybody doesn't agree with this. I was taught about it, I think 2 months ago. I felt a bit awkward since I'm a Muslim. I don't agree with this type of stuff. And they kept talking about it, saying that we should be nice about it. Obviously we should, but it just felt really awkward in the situation.
In an apparent effort to tarnish parent protests, media pundits and LGBT activists have described critics as radical extremists. However, it isn't Muslims only who are concerned by this issue, as a British Jewish activist made clear to us earlier on.
Jewish people are generally very, very concerned about this. I live myself in Gateshead, and I actually admire you very much that you're actually involved in this. It's a very, very important thing. And what I want to point out as a Jewish person, this is not just a Jewish issue. And I want to speak, before I speak, I'll give a disclaimer, and then I'll show you how. I'm not representing an organization. I'm not representing any other person other than myself. But on the other hand, I am representing humanity. This is not just a religious issue. This is an issue which is literally an issue which affects humanity. Anybody who can speak up is speaking up for humanity. He's not speaking up necessarily, he's speaking up for religion, he's speaking up for God, yes, but he's speaking up for humanity. And this also puts into question in a very big way, that until now, the narrative they've been giving us is that they're doing this because they're concerned about terrorism and extremism. They cannot say this anymore, because even the doctors who were told that they were actually going to be teaching this stuff, most of the doctors were not interested.
Well, we're going to head back to the discussion now of our in-studio guest, Shakeel. So, Shakeel, we heard from people from the streets of London. It seems to me as if a lot of parents, particularly, are just kind of creeped out by the idea that kids so young are being introduced to any kind of relationship education, let alone this particular same-gender identity. Would you
yeah, you're absolutely right. Like I said, a parent, especially the mother, bears this child with the most excruciating pain, and then the fact that that child's is her responsibility to nurture physically, nurture mentally. If there's any issue with that child, she will be responsible. But when that mother becomes concerned about her child's mental welfare, the things that her child is learning, and then the fact that it could put the child in a worse position, she's completely disallowed and called a radical. called an extremist. And this is a woman who has bared this child through the most excruciating pain any human body could endure. And then, you know, it's absolutely discrimination, open discrimination.
And I think that another strange aspect to all this is the fact that basically the state is intervening to teach other people's kids about relationships and so on, when the parents don't even seem to be consulted. Were the parents being consulted in Birmingham?
This is where the major issue started for us in the city of Birmingham, was the fact that young children were coming home with sensitive books like Princess Boy, like my Chacha, which means my uncle in Asian is gay. Parents were, you know, horrified. Parents were very concerned that the fact that RSE has a 52-page guidance sheet, no curriculum has a 52-page guidance sheet, yet RSE comes with a 52-page guidance sheet teaching the people who will be delivering it how to do it, how to be mindful, how to keep age appropriateness to account, and moreover, consultations. People in sensitive areas must be consulted, but no, any parent that speaks up is labelled an extremist. And I'm very glad that you posted this video about walking around the streets, because we did the same thing with one of the mainstream channels and they didn't air it. Every person they were questioning, majority of them being English Christian or English people, and they categorically said, no, primary school is not the age to be teaching such sensitive subjects to any child. You know, let them be innocent, let them have that right to be children. We're moving sexualization from the back of the child's mind right to the front at such an age when UK has synonymously known to have underage pregnancies. UK, you know, it's all the evidence is there, yet they continue to push it, they continue to force it, majority on ethnic minority and people of Abrahamic faiths.
It is interesting. Public opinion does seem to have a massive appetite for debating this issue at the very least.
Absolutely.
A recent petition got well over 100,000 signatures, and it was calling for a ban of LGBT relationship education in the RSE curriculum. Let me quickly ask you about the media reaction that you received. You was a big activist in Birmingham at the time. How did the media treat you?
The media completely vilified me. Every single report or any single interview that I did, at a point I had to get my own teams recording it because of the fact of how much was being chopped and changed. I was smeared to be some sort of criminal. I was smeared to be bringing gangs of mobs of people. And these are brothers and sisters of the children who are at the school. These are mothers and fathers, uncles, grandparents of the children who are at the school. And, you know, they've completely vilified me to the point where I had police markers on my car. I had police markers on my children's school. A lot of people completely disallowed the fact when I said I have children of my own. On this particular school, it was my niece and nephew, which are as good as my children, but I have kids on my own. I know how a parent feels when your child is being indoctrinated so, you know, viciously. You know, it wasn't even a subtle, it was a vicious indoctrination. You are a girl today, or you can maybe be a boy tomorrow. This was the level the schools were going. And there is, unfortunately, a massive LGBT extremist lobby. Now, for me personally, as a parent, I don't mind what people do in the comfort of their own homes, as long as they don't force that on me. But there is an extremist lobby which is lobbying around majority Muslim areas. We are the only last religion who are keeping their morals intact, who are keeping their philosophical convictions intact and will not bend them. But effectively, what the state is doing is teaching Muslim children. When you say to a Muslim child, it's okay to be homosexual, it's equivalent to teaching them it's okay to eat pork, or it's okay to drink alcohol, or it's okay to commit fornication without, you know, being in the confines of marriage. It's absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, because obviously it's supposed to be a secular society in the sense that you have a right to practice your faith without someone forcing their views down your throat.
Absolutely.
And it seems strange to me as well that you have the LGBT side of the argument claiming that actually it's religion forcing their views onto the LGBT community, but actually it appears that this is the reverse case, where actually they're forcing their views onto our kids and trying to get kids being taught by teachers and strangers, essentially. Shakeel, I'm going to have to end it there because we have run out of time, but I really appreciate you being with us.
Thank you very much for
having
having me.
Yes, thank you to everyone at home for watching as well, and thank you to the guests, of course. For now, that's it, but we will be back next week for another edition of Eye on Islam. Assalamu alaikum for now.